Hi, I'm Donny, and this is the Greg and Donny News Show. Greg and I are half awake here. We're here to give you unbiased politics.
Hi, I'm Spartacus, and I'm your conservative host for today. I thought you were going to be doing the I'm Spartacus thing. I've been waiting all week to do that. So I've been playing Spartacus news clips all over the place. You know, we had, it's like when they had the Ron DeSantis thing with the monkeys comment, that stupid comment he made. Well, it's only stupid because you don't say monkey with a black candidate. It's just it's an obvious flaw. You don't want to do that, all right? And so, but we were playing monkey songs all through that. So have you noticed my Facebook page and the Greg and Donny news page?
Yeah, that's what I figured I'd give you the Spartacus thing.
Spartacus everywhere. So we're all gonna. Today we're all Spartacus, all right? It's like John Kennedy when he was in Berlin. Ich bin ein Berliner. Except the problem was he said Berliner with a Boston accent. Yeah. So he actually said I'm a jelly donut. All right. So that's where that came from. So we're just kind of segueing. I've only had 3 hours sleep because I was at Bands in the Blackwater last night, which is a wonderful tradition here in Milton. Now, it cracked me up because they had a band called Twisted, it was like Oliver Twisted or something like that, whatever it was. Something, I'm expecting a British band, all right? I'm expecting a British invasion. And it was a bunch of black musicians who were doing like Barry White and other stuff like that, and it was great. It was a great group. But it's just not, you know, you expect Oliver Twist, you know, you're expecting like Beatles. And, you know, things didn't happen that way at all. All right. So we're both functioning on virtually no sleep, having way too much fun doing it. All right, you got a topic? I got several.
Well, you've already brought up the Spartacus thing. Let's talk Kavanaugh.
Let's talk about Kavanaugh. Right. Yeah, it's a problem. And I got a detailed thing I want to do. I'm going to turn my. I'm actually getting ahead of things. I'm turning my phone off now. We're actually pretty much in the same place we usually are for videos. We're just facing a different direction, and so hopefully the lighting is going to be better because every time we do this, it's a new experience in photography. So let's talk. What are your impressions of Kavanaugh?
Dick Durbin was my absolute favorite.
Oh, isn't a communist? Oh, he's terrible. He's like one of the worst senators ever. He's so liberal. If his policies were enacted, we'd have been bankrupt years ago. All right, go ahead. So what do you like about Dick Durbin?
He was just hammering the guy. I mean, everyone else, yeah, they were rough on him, but compared to Durbin, giving him an easy time.
Well, Durbin's got a lot of experience. I mean, he's been in the Senate. I think he's one of the third longest-serving members in the Senate. So it makes sense that he would know how to do it. But specifically, what was Durbin asking that you found impressive?
I mean, really, it was just the fact that he was questioning him, wouldn't take answers he wasn't satisfied with. What I liked about it is that that's what we see out of the Republicans, and we don't see it as much out of Democrats. But
what I'm really concerned with are the particular issues that he found, that Durbin found more objectionable than, say, Republicans had a lot of. Actually, it was, I think they call it a love fest. You know, it's what was going on between the Republicans, except Lindsey Graham. I'm going to talk about that in a bit, because I find... Did you get a chance to see that video?
Yeah, I saw it.
Isn't that amazing? We're going to talk about that in a little bit. But back to Democrats. They were mostly trying to get documents introduced that are already out there, trying to get things, specific White House records. I found that really strange, that they wanted his email communications when he was White House counsel. That's privilege. You can't have that stuff. But what you do have, what's important for understanding Kavanaugh, are his court opinions. Those are the things that you need. So I never understood the Democrat push to get all this other stuff that to me seemed irrelevant.
Well, those things were available for other potential justices. I mean,
that's nice.
Yeah.
You know, but we don't judge everything by everything that's happened before. You know, things. We got an early morning flyover here. So you're liable to hear a bunch of different noises. We got planes flying over. We got cicadas in the trees. All right. So again, we're going to try and move inside and try and up our production value a little bit here. But we got people behind us. Whatever happens, happens. We're just kind of going with it. But so you're big on precedent. You think that if someone was interviewed in a particular way before, they should be interviewed. That everybody should have that standard.
Right.
Okay.
And also.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Don't worry about it. But I think we can both agree a lot of crooked stuff happened during the Bush years. And this guy, I mean, this guy was right there at the forefront of it all.
Well, like I said, he was White House counsel, so his job is to represent the president. He's the president's lawyer. Okay, as opposed to the Attorney General who runs the Justice Department. But the White House counsel is the one that supposedly keeps the president out of trouble from doing things that they're not supposed to, from not making stupid mistakes, or in the case of right now, Rudy Giuliani, keeping him away from the Witch Hunt Commission. I had to get that in. Okay, come on. I'm having fun here. It's Saturday morning. It's hot. We're already hot. What is it, like 90 degrees already or something like that? It's crazy. So at Florida, I've discovered that in the summertime, you're always wet. You're either wet because you need a shower, you're wet because you just had a shower, you're wet because it's humid out here, you're wet because you just got rained on.
That's been a thing lately.
So whatever happened, you're wet. There's nothing you can do about it. Your hair doesn't dry. That's just the way it goes. I was like 3 hours last night, my hair never dried. I go outside, have a shower before the concert. I'll be fine. 10 minutes, we'll be done. No! Came home, wet hair, 3 hours later. Welcome to Florida. All right. Now that I've totally lost our train of thought.
We have.
Well, now here's the weird thing about Kavanaugh is I don't like him either. For very different reasons. This is what I wanted to get specifically. You know, I'm thinking. I thought you were going to bring up like Roe v. Wade, or you're going to bring up some of the other, big particular issues. They're talking about environmental health, safety, things like that. Traditional Democrat issues that you say that the Republicans don't like, which isn't true. It's like we don't want all regulation taken away. We just want the stupid ones. All right, so those are the unnecessary ones, the ones that benefit extremist groups at the expense of everybody else, the nonsense climate change ones. We've never had our climate change debate. We need to do that. We do. We do need to do that. So we're going to do that, especially wearing all the Hawaiian shirt tradition continues on here. So I do the polo shirt conservative look and radical. We had to switch one day. I got to get the Hawaiian shirt. You got to get the polo shirt. We're going to do a reversal show where I come in like, hey man. All right, let me give you the liberal point of view. This is just the way we're going to have a reversal day, so that's going to be fun. All right, I want to bring up something that to me is the most critical 7 minutes of the entire hearing, and it happened with Lindsey Graham. And if you notice, there's been nothing about this on the media. I mean, absolutely nothing. And what Lindsey Graham did was he's looking at Kavanaugh, and he says, "Let's talk about Roe v. Wade." And I posted this to the Greg and Donny News Show page. It's the one which says, this is the most critical thing that happened in the hearing. The one that you haven't seen yet because you're not watching it because we only reached like 8 people. Okay? It's there. I got a bug on my glasses too. So I try and present this stuff. I should stop saying this is the most important. I'll start saying this is totally irrelevant. Okay, don't look at this. Or I'll have like a picture of either a gun, a hot babe, or something else to attract everybody's attention. All right.
That'll do it.
Did I tell you about that? Just to digress, which is like the whole point of the show. The Stormy Daniels one. There was like somebody else and Stormy Daniels, and it was an article about something totally irrelevant, but like 600 people looked at that view just because Stormy Daniels was in it. So we need to have more sex in our show. So we're gonna have like some beach babe walk by us here, at some point just to see who's watching. All right, and we'll have to work that in. So back to the serious stuff. Do you like the idea that just immediately leap? It's a gift.
Love it.
It's a gift. All right. So what he talked about, and he asked Kavanaugh straightforward. Where in the Constitution is this right of abortion? And of course, Kavanaugh goes to the answer that he's been drilled into his head since probably the 12 years old when he first was told. Patting on the head, say, you're going to be on the Supreme Court one day. Just be a good boy. You're part of the elite. You're going to make it. Don't worry about it. We've already cleared the path for you. You're going to go to Yale. Then you're going to be a judge, and then you're going to be on the Supreme Court. Okay. So you know how this works, right? The elite. We have our own elite in this country. This is another thing that bothers me. This is why I wish Trump had picked an outsider. So he goes and of course then he gives so then Kavanaugh just starts saying, well, the Supreme Court has already ruled that this right comes from the Liberty Clause of the 14th Amendment. But it's not there. It's not written there. So Graham asks him again. No, specifically, he says, then where in the Liberty Clause is this right of abortion? Well, it's not there. It's in the penumbra. It's in the created rights from the Liberty Clause. And the Liberty Clause says, if I may paraphrase, that life, liberty, and property may not be deprived, the states may not, except by due process. And what that does is that actually extends all the constitutional federal rights to the states. In other words, the states have to comply with their rights also. And originally it was designed for freed black slaves. That's where it came about. So that not only were freed black slaves free, and could vote and do everything else, but they couldn't have any rights denied, that freed black slaves were entitled to full citizenship. That's what the 14th Amendment was about. Same with the 13th Amendment, which ended slavery. But it doesn't. But then the Supreme Court. We talked about this with liberty of contract.
Yeah.
So what do you think of how? Why don't you go through and tell everybody kind of because you're new to that concept, and we just figured it out last week. But what do you think?
It really,
put you on the spot here.
Yeah, I mean, it really is a tough one. I'm still undecided on it.
Okay.
You know, I really do like Roe v. Wade and some of the other things, but I definitely do see your point of view about.
Well, the problem with an activist judge or an activist judiciary or an activist Supreme Court is that it's great when they're activists for you.
Right.
It sucks when they're activists for the other people, and that's been our problem. So we had the what I would call the capitalist extremists in the early 1900s, because I can't call it conservative because they weren't conserving anything. They certainly weren't conserving the Constitution and the right of free assembly, which unions, have that right. I mean, you have a right to associate with who you want to associate with. If that results in a union, that's okay. I don't have a problem with that, which differs from me from most. So I would call myself a constitutional extremist if I had to do anything. But the whole point of liberty of contract was that the Supreme Court said back in the early 1900s, unions could not form. It was illegal, because they were bargaining unfairly with corporations, because one employee equals an entire corporation. It was a bogus, stupid theory, but this happened in the early 1900s, all right? And so this is why I felt the left then said, okay, well, if the courts are working for the capitalist extremists, they can work for us with our communist socialist program. Let's bring in, privacy and all these. Now, we already have safe and secure in your home persons and effects. That is a right to privacy. Do you agree?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if you already have a right to privacy, why do you need another right to privacy?
Right.
You're not going to defend it? You are tired this morning.
I am.
I'm so much fun. All right, so this is going to be my show today. Because we're going to wake you up, dude. Have to take a Rubio break. Did you have your water or anything?
No.
You just showed up here, didn't you, like 5 minutes ago? We just. All right, I won't go into it, but anyway, it's been an interesting couple of days. All right, so back to what we were originally talking about with Kavanaugh. So Lindsey Graham is grilling him, and I really hope you go to our Greg and Donny Facebook page and take a look.
Great.
It was fascinating.
Yeah.
I mean, and this is from a conservative. Okay, so Lindsey Graham deserves all the credit in the world for what he did. So then he develops this through, and what he's talking about is the whole idea that liberty. The liberty clause of the Constitution means life, liberty, and property, or life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness from the Declaration of Independence. It doesn't mean you can kind of make up rights. And he said, well, what's to stop you, Lindsey Graham, Senator Graham talking to Brett Kavanaugh, what's to stop you from making up any other rights? Okay? What is this unlimited power, and what is the check on this unlimited power? And what they said was, if, you in Roe v. Wade, you basically said that that there's no government compelling interest until viability. Something big just jumped in the water there. We got fish in the Blackwater. In fact, I was talking to somebody at the Blackwater, bands on the Blackwater last night. They said we should do a fishing show. So we're going to do one actually in the water, fishing, just talking. It's gonna be great. All right.
I'm down.
So exactly. So back to Kavanaugh. So he looked at me. He says, it says, well, what's to stop you from creating any right? If you can create out of a right to privacy, which isn't in the Constitution, a right to abortion, which isn't in the Constitution, and I would put in on top of that abortion can't be a right because it doesn't involve one person. Rights are always individual. There's no such thing as a collective right. So the ACLU interpretation of the Second Amendment, meaning it's a militia, that's not true, because rights are always individual. So abortion is something that doesn't affect just one person. It actually affects 3 people. Okay? Or if you're deciding that fetuses are not human life yet, I happen to believe they are, then but it's at least 2 people. But it's not an individual right, because abortion cannot be exercised individually. Because you're, as far as I'm concerned, ending a life. And we'll talk about the merits of that at some point. I don't want to do that now, but it's certainly an interesting chat. But when you think about it,
definitely have a lot to talk about there.
We do have a lot to talk about there, and I think it's interesting. I think the older folks get, having been a father, I think that changes my views, because I was pro-choice liberal back when I was you.
Right.
Okay, and it made perfect sense to me. I don't have kids, I don't have that responsibility. But then you think about it afterwards, you think, what is life, and when, what are we responsible for, and what can we handle? Until you're a parent, you don't realize you can be a parent. We'll talk about that too. Back to Kavanaugh. So the point of he went to him, so you're making up these rights. Now what stops you if you want to make up a right? So in other words, what he led to with the abortion question was, if the state has no compelling interest until viability, which is what it says in the Roe v. Wade decision, what if Congress made a law saying that we do have a compelling interest, we're going to we're going to change the rules on abortion, open it up to the states before viability? Would that go against the Supreme Court decision? Of course, Kavanaugh said, yes, it would. And I said, well, why can't we do that? And of course, Kavanaugh was like, well, because the Supreme Court ruled. He went to the book answer, the textbook answer, right? And so then it was fascinating. So Lindsey Graham looks at him and he says, well, wait a minute. So what you're saying then is, if legislation can't overturn a Supreme Court decision, then it has to be a constitutional amendment. So you're saying, in other words, in the way he got there was in order for the Supreme Court to be overruled in a constitutional decision, it has to be done by a constitutional amendment, because then the Supreme Court would then be forced to rule from that new amendment. So in other words, 5 justices of the Supreme Court can overrule the Congress, up to 2/3 of the Congress and up to 3/4 of the states, by simply making one ruling with 5 people. That, to me, is judicial tyranny. It's the absolute definition of judicial tyranny. And whether we disagree on the Roe v. Wade decision for a whole bunch of reasons. But the point is, do you ever want a Supreme Court that thinks, which they do now? This is why we need judicial reform. This is why I'm going to write Congressman Gates.
We need term limits.
Well, we can do term limits for judges too. Well, they are term limited to good behavior. People keep saying lifetime. It's not a lifetime appointment. It's good behavior. Am I getting the sun on my reflection in here? Slide over a bit. There, we're going to have to keep moving. Yeah, see, I'm already in the sun. All right. The sun's not cooperating us for this morning. But I'll ask you, the listener, does this make sense, or the viewer, that if the Supreme Court has an unlimited power to create any right they want, you know, who's to say they won't, and it takes a constitutional amendment to overturn a Supreme Court opinion. Now, bear in mind that Supreme Court opinions are the lowest on the chain of supremacy. First of all, you've got Supreme Court opinions, which are superseded by laws duly passed. Laws are supreme to Supreme Court opinions, you know, unless there's a check on the government agency themselves as disputing parties. And laws are superseded by the Constitution. Laws are subordinate to the Constitution, okay? But he's got it backwards. He thinks that the Constitution, this is why I hate Kavanaugh and Gorsuch and all the justices, is they believe that nothing is real in the Constitution until the Supreme Court rules on it. Heller declared an individual right to even bear arms. And what they're saying is that right didn't exist until the Supreme Court said it did, even though the Constitution said it back in 1789. That's the problem I have with Kavanaugh. Your turn. Come on, wake up.
Yeah. You know,
I'm picking on him today because I can't.
I've just been really waiting to get into this. I mean, I do agree with a lot of what you're saying, but I don't think we've ever really debated this. The Constitution is a living document meant to be interpreted.
Well, let's do it now.
Yeah, let's do it.
It's not.
I saw you get into this with Ray. I've been waiting.
It's a contract. Now, here's 2 very different views of the Constitution. This is why liberal judges are never qualified to serve on the Supreme Court, because they believe a Constitution is a living document. You know, let's go make your I don't know, your contract with your college living. Okay, let's make your degree living. All right. So today it's political science, tomorrow it's economics. You know, the day after that it's you know, cake decorating. All right. So let's make things living. Let's make our laws living too. Well, speeding is like a relative term. Speeding is only speeding if you don't have someplace to go. Okay, so if then so that's a living interpretation of the speeding law, right?
Yeah.
I just came up with that just now. Okay, so think about that. So if you say to the officer, well, the law is living, I'm not really speeding because I have someplace I have to be. Therefore, it's directed driving. That's my interpretation of the speeding laws. This is a good example. All right, that's a living law. I have then taken it and interpreted it to suit my own policy and my own situation, and that's what the Supreme Court does, and that's why it's wrong.
But here's the other thing. The Founding Fathers, don't get me wrong, they were great guys.
Sure they were. Yeah, right.
Absolute intellectuals.
Giants among men.
Yes.
Creating things that have never been done before, saying that you, yes, you, are your own sovereign.
Yeah. And I mean, that really was groundbreaking.
Yep.
But they were flawed.
It's always a but.
They owned slaves. There weren't any women in the room. I mean, a lot of people who are nowadays a part of the national conversation were left out at the time.
Well, we don't have slaves anymore. They're not left out of the conversation.
Right.
Okay.
Left out of that conversation.
Okay. So, and my answer to that, which I just happen to have handy in the back of my brain, is that before the Founding Fathers, nobody had these rights. So, yes, they were granted to white male property owners at first. But before that, nobody had these rights. It was inconceivable that the king, speaking of Roe v. Wade, no, sorry, but but the King of England was not going to grant citizenship or sovereignty. In fact, he didn't even grant it to his own subjects. There's a reason that the British are called subjects, because they're not citizens. They don't have inalienable rights. The rights come from the government. So the fundamental change that made today not have slaves, and to make today all the people that you say that weren't in the conversation in the beginning, the only reason they're in the conversation now is because yes, it started with white male property owners, but women got the vote and all kinds of other things. Now, granted, we've been more socialist since women got the vote. We'll discuss the merits of that later, and that's true. But the thing is that the revolution, what made the founding so special is that these rights were given to anybody, and the fundamental change that rights do not come from your monarch, they do not come from your sovereign, they do not come from government, they come from God. They come from your birth. You are born with certain unalienable rights. That is a fundamental change in history. And that is why we have rights today, regardless of the fact that only so many people had them in the beginning.
You helped me out there a little, though.
Okay.
Because how did we free the slaves? How did we allow them to vote? How did we give women the vote? We made changes to the Constitution as time went on.
And that's okay. No, that's fine. Amending the Constitution, I have no problem with. It has to be amended at times because some certain things don't work, and those do change. And there is a process for amending. It's purposely not easy, but it's there. You know what? I'm going to shut this off in a little bit only because I'm in the sun right now, and we're going to have to move in a little bit, and we're still, like I said, we got studios in the works. We're going to do that, but I want to finish up this constitutional thing. Yeah. So I don't mind the Constitution being amended, but the Constitution is a contract. The federal government is subordinate to the states. That's how the Constitution works. The states ratified the Constitution. The states created the Constitution. The states voted on the Constitution to delegate to a small central government certain things they could not do amongst themselves. One thing was regulate trade. Or currency, or things like that. That's why we have a federal government. And so to say that the Constitution is living is to say that your contract is living or any law is living. No, the law is what it says. Okay, you can change the law, and that's why I have legislation, and you can change, court opinions, because you certainly don't want the opinions that have stood before. Lochner, liberty of contract. Plessy versus Ferguson, separate but equal is okay. Those things you obviously don't want to stand.
Right.
But I don't mind amending the Constitution carefully. Okay. It'd be interesting if we had the Equal Rights Amendment now. Men would have equal standing in divorce court, and would have equal standing in all kinds of different areas.
You've been waiting for that, haven't you?
I just thought of it just now. I remembered it. But yeah, but that's true. So I had no problem with the Equal Rights Amendment. I think it would have been a good thing. Women would then have to register for selective service. All these things that women don't do now because they have special privileges would be gone under the Equal Rights Amendment. I'm going to have to shut this off. Okay, we're going to be back, but I've got too much sun right now, so we're going to take care of this and...